Welcome to Home Studio, and this video is getting started with Photopea. I'll often say Photopea, but I believe it's pronounced Photopea. But what Photopea is a Photoshop-like application that's available online, and it's free, and you could do most of the same things you could do with Photoshop. So if you ever wanted to get started doing photo editing in Photoshop, we can do it with Photopea. I've used it for online classes where we used to use Photoshop, or students didn't have access to Photoshop, so we're going to work with Photopea. So all those exercises that I used in a college class, I'm going to teach you here for free. So we're going to just get started in this video. So let's do that now and go to photopea.com. Photopea, like pea, like the vegetable, although I mentioned I will say Photopea. And here it is, and the nice thing about Photopea, other than it's free, is you don't have to sign in, you don't have to create an account, you can. The only downside is you might see ads over here, and we can do a lot of things that we could do in Photoshop, and even more, and I'll show you that later, but let's get started for now. Now you can use this whether you're on Mac, Windows, or a Chromebook. You can save things to Google Drive if you're on a Chromebook, but right now I'll kind of work off my hard drive. We'll be able to save Photoshop files to our hard drive. So that's what we're going to do first. Now what I did was put a file on my desktop, and then I'll also open up a file from online just to show you the different ways that we can do that. So what I'll do first is I'll go File, Open, and I'll open up this HEIC file that I have off my iPhone. Let me see if I can open that up. I may not be able to open up an HEIC file, so we'll just go over that first. Can I open it up? Probably not. Photoshop will not open that up either. So let me go find that file. There it is. Now if I double click it on a Mac, it'll open up in the preview application. And you might think, well, I don't want to be in preview. Well, just do this. Just do Command A, which actually selects everything. Command A is select all. So we just did a select all Command A. And then we're going to copy. And that would be Command C if you're on a Mac. And I'm not sure what happens with HEIC files from an iPhone on Windows, but I'll find out for you. But let's copy this, and I'm going to go to Photopea. Now I'm not going to open it, I'm just going to go File New. Now watch what happens. When I go File New, it says 1280 by 720. It changes to 4032 by 3024. It's actually making the document the same size as the image that I just copied, from Preview. And I could close this up now. And I'll just hit Create. And what it does is it makes a new document based on the size of the image I copied. Now, I want to paste it, obviously, so I'm going to do Command V and I'll paste it. Now there it is. So that wasn't hard to get in there. And what I could also do is I could name this. I'm just going to double click on this, and I could give it a name, and I'll just call it Dogs for now. Just keep it simple. Dogs, and you don't have to put the extension. I'll just put Dogs, and it'll be dogs.psd. And what you may want to do is save this to your hard drive. So I'm just going to go File, Save as PSD, which is a Photoshop document, and I'm going to save it to my desktop now. You can save it anywhere you want, and it's called dogs.psd, and I'll just hit Save. Now it's saved there. So now any incremental changes that I make to this will be saved to my computer, even though I'm working on the web, which is pretty cool. And if you wanted to resize this a little bit, you don't have to crop it. What you could do is just resize it in this window. So I'm going to go here and put on my transform handles, and I'm going to click on this layer. It's called layer 1. And actually I double clicked here. I'm going to call it dogs dash now and hit enter. And now with these handles, I'm going to grab and just resize this a little, which will actually make it larger in the canvas window, and then I can move it around. So I'm just going to do that to resize it. Now, one thing, I don't know if this is new or not, but typically you hold Shift to constrain it so that it doesn't distort it. But actually now, if you hold Shift, it distorts it. It does things like that, which you don't want to do. So now, by default, if you just scale it with the transform handles, it'll keep it constrained. Now, I'm just going to hit my Escape key and put it back to the way it was. And now I'll just do that again. So now I'm just going to go in the corner here and just start to scale it, and then move it around. So I'm moving it and scaling it just to make it fit in there nicely. And then when you're done, you could hit this check mark, or you could hit enter or return. Now this bounding box doesn't go away, so if this is bothering you, you could turn this off. And that's the layer called Dogs Now. Now I'm going to put another layer in here because maybe I want 2 photos that I'm going to put up on Facebook so they can see their dogs before and after. So what I'll do is I'll go online. Now I have this in Google Photos right now. Here's this kind of album that I have, and this is early photos of the dog. So I'm going to click on this. I don't want the thumbnail. I want the large image. So I'm going to click here and get the large image, and then I'm just going to copy it. I'll right click and I'll use copy image, and I'll go back to Photopea and I'll just paste. And it'll paste it in the same window. Now, if you're wondering why this is smaller, it's because the resolution isn't as high, meaning there's not as many pixels, because the version in Google Albums is probably a little bit smaller. You can always get a higher res image, but for right now, this isn't a big deal. It's just pictures of dogs. I could show you how to get higher res images from Google Photos later. That's not the issue right now. But I'm going to turn on my transform handles, and I'm going to scale this. And again, I don't have to hold shift. I just have to make it nice and big. And I want to make sure I can see their paws, so I'll move it up. Even though it is cropped down there, I'll show as much as I can. And I could go up a little bit. Up here, I'll just fill it up with their heads and move it over. And I'll hit enter to OK it, or you could hit the check mark. I just like to hit enter. And again, you could turn off the transform handles. So what I have right now are 2 layers. This layer, which is called layer 1, and I'll turn that off, this little eyeball here, the visibility icon, I'll turn that off. And that's dogs now. So here's layer 1. Now I'm going to double click on here and call this dogs then, if that makes sense. So I have 2 layers, dogs then, turn that off, and here's dogs now. Now keep in mind, just because you turn it off, I'm on this layer, I'm targeting this layer. So if I did anything to this layer, I'm looking at the top layer. So be careful when doing that. For example, this picture here of Parker, he's very dark and it's hard to see some of the detail. What you can do is, first of all, go on dogs then, because that's the actual layer. Make sure you go on that layer. And I'm just going to go to image, I'll go to adjustments, and I'll go down to shadows highlights. For indoor photos, this is a great tool, shadows highlights, because a lot of indoor photos sometimes have too many shadows that need to be lightened up. It's also great for outdoors too, when you have really dark shadows if you take photos outside. And you can see what it did already. It's lightening him up, the shadows. Now that's way too much. So I'll probably go down to like 20 and just kind of lighten up his fur just a little bit. And you could hit preview before and after. And it just lightens him up a little bit. If that's too much, take it down to 15. Now we'll go over more of this, the tone, the radius later, but just for now, if you just work on the amount, that's fine. And just kind of put preview. I just want it a little bit better. I don't want to make it too chalky, just a little bit better so you see a little more detail there. And that looks good. So I'll hit OK. And again, that was called shadows highlights, and that's a great tool. Photoshop also has that tool. Now, if I go down to dogs now, and I turn off the top layer so I could see this, we have the same issue here where he's very dark. He's hard to see his eyes, anything like that. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and there's all these adjustments we'll go over at some point, but right now shadows highlights is a good one. And same thing, it's making him chalky right now, so I'll try like 15. See if it looks just a little better. And I'll put preview off, and then on, and it just makes it a little bit lighter. And I guess that's okay for now. And I'll hit OK. And now I just corrected both of these images. There's dogs then, here's dogs now. Now, I'm not going to go over any more photo corrections right now because I just want to get started with Photopea. Now, again, remember, we saved this to our hard drive, to our desktop, so you could go File, Save, and it'll save incrementally. And if you want to put these on Facebook or somewhere, you want to send them to somebody, you can export them out of here. Now I have 2 images on a layer here on a Photoshop document. And if I want to generate 2 JPEGs from these images, all I have to do is do them one at a time. Now you can actually do multiple layers at the same time, but just for now, we'll do one at a time. We'll do dogs then, and we'll generate this as a JPEG. And I'll choose File, Export as JPEG, because that's the best format for photographs and the easiest to access. And it's saying 4,000 by 3,000. Now, if you don't need an image that big, you're going to put it on Facebook or whatever. You don't need an image that large. You could go here and make it half the size, put 2,000. And if you click here, it should kind of resize for you. Now it's 2,000 by 1,500. That should be fine for something that's not really high quality, that you don't need a really high-res image and a really large file size. So 2000 by 1500, that should be fine. Quality, I usually put it at 80. That's the compression for JPEG. And I'll put it at 80 right now. That'll just make the file size smaller. And what's going to happen when you save for web, this is called save for web, because we're saving a JPEG here, downloads to your downloads. So we'll just hit save. And there it goes. It downloads to your downloads. Now that's dogs.jpg. And actually, let me do that again, because what I really want to do, file, export as JPEG. I actually want to call this one dogs then. I don't want to have one just called dogs. You might say, well, why did it call it dogs? Because it took that file name. So let's call it dogs then and just make another one. We could delete the other one. And it's already using that 2000 by 1500 size. It's at 80%. Let's hit save. And I'm getting a confirm message here. I'll just hit OK. Now it's saying dogs then 1, and I bet I actually have something in my downloads because I think I did this before just to make sure. So let me get rid of all these. Let me delete all these and throw them out. And let's do it one more time. That'll be good for a refresher. File, export as JPEG, and dogs then, and I'll hit save. Now we're going to have dogs then in our downloads. Now if I want dogs now, I just want to make sure it's visible. It doesn't even matter if you're on this layer or that layer. It matters what layer you're on when you're doing adjustments, but when you're saving them as JPEGs, it's whatever one is visible. So I want to make sure dogs now is visible, and it doesn't matter if I'm on this one or that one, but get in the habit of being on the correct one. So I turned off dogs then, I have dogs now selected, and it doesn't matter if it's saved or not. This asterisk means the Photoshop file is not saved. We could save it when we're done, but right now we're just generating a JPEG. So I'll just go File, Export as JPEG. And again, it's using dogs because it's dogs.psd, and I'm going to put dogs now. But everything else is the way I want it, 2000, 1500, and I'll hit save. So now I have both of those images downloaded into my downloads. There's my downloads. There's dog now. There it is. There's dog then. And on a Mac, if I double click, it opens up in preview just to look at it. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, this is pretty cool what we could do in Photopea. We don't need Photoshop to be able to do this. You could do this anytime, and you could just jump on a web page and just go right to photopea.com. So this is pretty cool to do that. So we generated 2 JPEGs. Now you could upload those to Facebook or Instagram or wherever you want to put those to show people your puppies or whatever. And I'll close that up. Now here, we're back here. I'll close these downloads up so we don't have to look at them. And you could save this. You could save the changes because we did make some changes in terms of color correction and things like that, which we'll go over lots of things in Photopea in terms of adjustments, how to make images less yellow, how to warm them, cool them, all kinds of things. But this is just getting started. So I'll just go File, Save, just to save the Photoshop. And that one is now available. If we ever wanted to open this up again, notice the asterisk went away. If we ever want to open this up again, we could just close this up and go here to File, Open, and wherever we saved it, which was on my desktop, I could open it up, and we could go in here and do whatever we want to do, or add more pictures. We could go find more pictures of the dogs. Maybe we want to make a photo album or something and put it on Facebook. We can get more pictures of the dogs and put them somewhere and generate them as JPEGs. So that's a little introduction to Photopea, just doing some basic adjustments and showing how you can open up multiple images in a Photoshop document, PSD, and then export them as JPEG. If that's all you're going to do, hopefully this is a help for you, but I'm going to show you lots of things that you can do in Photopea. We'll do colorizing, we'll do image adjustments, we'll do layers, we'll do cloning, all kinds of things. Anything you want to do in Photoshop, you could do here in Photopea. Even more, you can even share Photoshop documents, which I've done in online classes, which is really cool because you can't normally share Photoshop documents, but you can actually do it with an URL right here in Photopea. So I like Photopea. It's really cool, and I'm going to show you lots of things to do in here. So hopefully that's a good start for you in Photopea. Stick around for more videos in this playlist.